Okay, it's been a while since I got around to actually doing any of these. It's just been bloody hectic around here. First thing I'm going to do is my review of TNA Lockdown, which better than WrestleMania, better than WrestleMania, better than WrestleMania, better than WrestleMania, better than WrestleMania. I just enjoyed it more. I thought it was very well put together. It flowed a lot better than previous TNA events have done. It certainly had the wow factor in the matches, and as I say, the storyline just fitted together that little bit better. I think it's a shame that they ended the whole thing with Hogan and Flair in the ring. Although it was always going to happen, it was called Team Hogan and Team Flair. If you're going to have Team Hogan and Team Flair, you're going to have Hogan and Flair involved in it. It was just a phenomenal pay-per-view, and WrestleMania really wasn't, to be honest with you. WWE needs to up its game if they're going to continue to compete with TNA as far as the quality of what they put out is. WWE are still just mailing it in and ignoring the fact that TNA exists, and perhaps that's the right thing to do. There is no war if you don't fight the war, I suppose. As I say, I sat for 3 hours, watched the Lockdown event. Probably actually the worst match, in my opinion, in the entire thing was the Lethal Lockdown event. But I think that those sorts of matches are difficult to get right, if at all possible. I don't like the whole premise that we're wrestling for 25 minutes before anybody can win the match. It seems a bit pointless. And as well, I don't like this idea that one team's constantly on top. If they were to have one of each team starts off, and then one of one team comes in, one of the other team, and then one of the same team comes back in, so it goes backwards and forwards to who has the upper hand, then it'd be a lot more believable. But the fact that one team's always going to have, or half the time going to have, one more person in there, kind of negates the point of it. And then you get TNA doing silly things like people getting battered in the back and not turning up, people coming out of sync just because they feel like it. And that obviously negates the point of the match. Why come up with these intricate rules to things if you're just going to throw them aside and there's no retribution for that happening? The best match, and I know there's a lot of argument about what the main event of that particular programme was, and traditionally the main event is the last match. I'd have to say the Lethal Lockdown match is more of the title match of the pay-per-view than necessarily the main event. It was the main event as far as the storyline that they're carrying along with what they see as their main storyline, I suppose, which is Flair and Hogan rowing. Happens to be about my least favourite storyline that's going on within it, because it's Flair and Hogan, and where's it realistically going to go? I mean, now they've taken his ring off him this week and all that sort of thing, and I just don't understand why you go there with it. To have those two guys in there, and to have them, I mean, to have Flair as mentor to the heel champion was good, but why he needs to have this thing with Hogan that can only ever get to the point where you end up with Hogan and Flair back in the ring together, which I don't want to see, and I don't think anybody else really wants to see. Certainly not people that watch wrestling on a regular basis want to see it. It may well get you a boost of people that know Hogan from the old days, but I don't think Flair has that sort of star power at all. From outside the wrestling circles, I mean, Hogan is a very, very big name. Regardless of whether you're a wrestling fan or not, you will have heard of Hulk Hogan. We don't think that the same is true of Ric Flair. But as I say, I was talking about what the main event was. I know my friends who was at PWR show, they have been arguing about whether the Pope versus AJ was or wasn't the main event because it was for the title. the main event should realistically always be the title match, and it was a very, very good match. Predictable that the Pope didn't beat AJ, in my opinion. With all of the stars that they have now brought into TNA, they've put themselves now, I believe, in a position where pushing some of those homegrown, younger talents is not impossible, but difficult when you have the likes of RVD and Matt and Jeff Hardy sat in the back, and even AJ and Samoa Joe. I mean, yes, AJ and Samoa Joe are TNA talents, but they're not necessarily young TNA talents as much as they are portrayed as such. They've been there since the beginning of it all. But I think that it was all in all a good match. It was a good ending that he had to stab him in the eye with a pen to win the match, and I don't necessarily like those endings when you're in a cage. The point of being in a cage is that you're in a cage, and it's supposed to stop outside interference. And TNA, as with WWE, do on a regular basis, just seemed to ignore the fact that it was in a cage as and when it suited them. But the best match, without a shadow of a doubt, was predictably Ken Anderson versus Kurt Angle. Absolutely brilliant. Those two guys destroyed themselves for that match. Kurt Angle's moonsault off the top of the cage was just ridiculous. He damn near killed the pair of them. Good to watch, don't get me wrong. Very, very impressive to watch. But does somebody of Kurt Angle's abilities as a storyteller within the ring and as a wrestler who has that technical ability to grapple and everything else, which he can play very well off with Ken Anderson, who is also a very, very talented guy, do you need to have him moonsaulting off the top of the cage and putting himself in that sort of position where he could have hurt himself a great deal and could have hurt Ken? Perhaps they thought it did because he's now going away and you needed to keep him fresh and to have that to show when he came back in 3-6 months, however long he's going to be away, as they grow their audience. I suppose that, to have that sort of, it's a hallmark moment. It will be something that they show on their title credits for years to come, I suspect. But I think a little bit dangerous, personally speaking. I think it wasn't required for someone of their stature to do. It's something you expect Jeff Hardy or RVD to do, but not Kurt Angle. Again, the same thing with Jeff Hardy on top of a cage with a ladder that somebody left on top of a cage, because everybody needs ladders on top of gigantic cages. Excuse me. Then climbing the ladder and jumping off a ladder on top of a cage. There's a lot of scope, especially at a live event, for something to go wrong there, and I think that TNA needs to think more about its wrestlers, more about their safety. The last thing that TNA needs is to get a reputation amongst the wrestlers as being somebody who pushes the guys to do over-the-top things. It was a shame Doug Williams couldn't turn up to defend his title, but he was stuck over here in the UK with the aeroplane problem, and anybody that thinks that wasn't true should have been here when we were all just stranded for weeks. However, he was obviously going to lose it anyway. And there were a lot of other good matches. The 3D versus the Outlaws was brilliant. X-Pac not turning up. Who cares? Outlaws. Outsiders. I do apologise. And I didn't get the Kevin Nash fighting with the silly little Canadian geek. Anyway, my 10 minutes is nearly up, and I can't post this on YouTube if it goes longer, so I'll continue some of this in the next video. Thanks for watching, and watch next time. Comments in the top. Bye.